Okay, for the retro gaming project, I'm going to show you the game that I took this from. This is a game I remember from the Intellivision when I was a kid, and it came out around the same time as the Atari single stick one button version where it was like a cartridge based game, but it had some advantages. I'm not going to get into that much, but basically here was the game. And so you'd start out as this guy in this base, and there was a little gun that had like I think 5 shots in it. There were spiders that could come get you and robots that could come get you and shoot, and then these bats. So I think when the bats hit you, you just got stunned for a little bit, but the robots were the ones that could kill you. And I can't remember if the spider killed you too, but basically had all these characters that you could work with. And here's the sound from that. That was the sound of picking up a gun, and then you keep moving around. That's the sound of the robots shooting at you. So basically what I did for this project is I took a small section from the audio of that. Depending on what you get, you may be able to get the audio. It won't work so much for QuickTime, but if you could download it at home and bring it over, that's great. Otherwise, you're going to be searching for sounds, and sometimes you may actually just make some of your own sounds up to sell the game. So this one's using some moving video sound, but then what I did for the background is I took a still image of the gameplay space, and that's because I didn't want to have things moving around on stage on the screen. I wanted it to be just my added in elements. So I'm going to take that image and then using effects controls, I just scaled it up to make sure that it filled the entire space, and I use that as my backdrop. Okay, so again, you can find these images pretty easily for game screens on YouTube, or not YouTube, but Google. Sounds, depending on what you get original, and sometimes you'll find a website that will have the sounds as separate elements, like Pac-Man, for example. You could find all the different sounds from Pac-Man and just add them into the timeline where they're needed. But the shooting of the characters, though, these are the 2 that I had done, and this was quite a few years ago. I actually have a finished edit of it. And one important thing for doing green screen work is you want to make sure that the camera is steady and that your hands and feet or whatever you're doing doesn't fall out of frame. So for this wide angle shot, it was fairly easy to do. And then you can see me doing, I believe that was my range. That's just the running character motions. And then I did a sideways run. And then I think that's the robot. And then I did a separate take where I was doing all the other beasties, like the bat. I think I went lower for the bat to be smaller, and there's the spider. And then that's basically the elements that I did. So I'm just going to take a small section of that. I'm going to take this spider section. And because I know that I don't need any of the sound, I'm just drag video only. Saves me a step later. And then to show you, there's that spider. And before I do anything more with it, you can see that there's some resolution issues. So if I go to Effect Control and I scale it back a bit, you'll see the whole thing's there. I can work with that later. And then one of the effects that I used, I'm going to go ahead and go to Effects here, was the crop effect. And that's to get rid of the parts that aren't green. So I'm going to do that first and just search it up in this bar, crop, and drag and drop the effect down, and then use these areas to crop it. And again, I want to make sure that I'm not cropping it to the point where my hand falls out. Otherwise, it's going to look like my hand got chopped off. So I'm going to bring the left and the right in as little as I need to get a clean crop, and then double check to make sure that it didn't fall out. The next step is that you're going to take, this is the keying step, and then I'm going to stop at the end of this and do the animation separate. There's a tool called keying, and basically there's 3 different ways to do it, or a couple of different ways to do it. If you have a very straight color, like a YouTube clip, you probably will use a color key because it's going to be consistent. If you have anything with shading issues, lighting issues, you're probably going to want to use Ultra Key because it gives you more control over how to key the image. Don't get confused about color keying with keyframing. That's 2 different things. And I'm going to drop that effect onto the clip, because really what I want is just the element and nothing else. So to do that, I go into my Ultra Key options, and it's going to ask, what color do you want to key? And you have a little dropper tool. So you drag that dropper over to the green and select it. And a lot of the work is done, but you'll see that there's still some elements of the background. It's elements of shading and fold that are not there, not working well. So I've got to go to other values to work with. And one of the biggest ones I've seen is pedestal. It gives a little more separation between the background and the foreground element. And tolerance, which basically opens it up to different shades of green. And then I'm going to leave that as is. I'm going to leave that. That's about right. I'm going to go see how it looks. It's pretty good. There's other things you could do to clean up the matte around the edges, for example. And so you'll start to see that this can become a little bit of guess and check to get your matte to be fairly clean. You can also see sometimes when you overdo it, it's a little bit invisible. So, my best advice is to just slow down, take it one thing at a time, and then always be ready to go back if you can't figure out what's going on. And I think it was transparency that may have gone over too much. So I want to come back to just before the background starts to show up. That's actually a lot better. So now I got my element properly keyed, and I'm going to work with that a little bit later.